Right, I'm in this neighboring country, and then I get abducted by a foreign intelligence agency. By sunrise, I had a knock on my door, and I knew, first of all, the guy who led this abduction wasn't like a stranger. As soon as I went into that country, I started working with their country's like Bureau of Business Affairs, and they immediately attached him to me, and I knew he was, that from that intelligence agency. I mean, it was very easy to figure out. We had a number of local nationals working for this program, obviously, because of what we were doing. And a lot of them were recruited from the Northern Alliance. They were OGA trained for a specific program and then given to our program. So guys that were vetted, right? And so we had a number of them, and one of them flipped over to the Taliban. His name was Bashir. So Bashir flips over to the Taliban, and don't know why. When I say like this guy and I slept on the side of a mountain together, like we built operations together. He was one of my favorite guys outside of Aziz to work with. He was just super solid, tons of combat experience. But for whatever reason, maybe they started his family, whatever. He flips to the Taliban, compromised our operation. 12 of our teammates were captured, held, and then killed. 2 Americans, contractors, and 10 Afghans. And, people listening may not, you hear about Aziz, so maybe a little more context, but may not think it's as big of a deal for these Afghans to be killed and not Americans. But man, these guys were like my brothers. These guys that played soccer with their kids, slept in their homes, ate dinner with their families. Like, these guys would have died for me and I would have died for them. And I do believe they did die for me. In trying to protect our operation, and died for everybody, every American on here listening. That these guys were solid dudes. So when that happened, Aziz's family was contacted and he was targeted. So now he's compromised. And he chose, at that moment, I watched him choose to stay on the program, continue operating, and move his wife and kids into hiding and not have contact with his father, his in-laws, anyone. They chose that for us, to continue operating. That's how committed he was. In addition to that, we had a V-bid driven in one of my houses in vehicle born IED to blow up our house. The intent was obviously to kill me and my friends. Luckily, we weren't there at the time. But we do believe that one of our guards were there. We never heard from him again, so we assumed he was killed the house was level. And then at that time, we had all been pulled out to be briefed. Everyone across the board was like, okay, that happened, but we're still in. Like, we were like, this is too important. And so I went back into a neighboring country that I've been working in. I won't say the name because it's in my book, Saving Aziz. The Pentagon reviewed it and redacted it, and they redacted the name of that country, but not very hard to do the math, right? I'm in this neighboring country, and then I get abducted by a foreign intelligence agency.
How?
About sunrise, I had a knock on my door, and I knew, first of all, the guy who led this abduction wasn't like a stranger. As soon as I went into that country, I started working with their country's like Bureau of Business Affairs, and they immediately attached him to me. And I knew he was, that from that intelligence agency. I mean, it was very easy to figure out.
So this is this country's version of CIA.
Yeah. So he was basically, he would have been like assigned to me, and he's supposed to be a business guy. He wasn't very good at his cover. It was very obvious. He was always, all over, coming in our house, like taking things, took a thumb drive off my desk. It was constant. And then I had another
sloppy tradecraft.
Very sloppy tradecraft. I mean, like, hey, come in my office. I do the same business as you. I go into his office, and like the flyers for the business is still warm. like the picture's like fresh on the wall. And the secretary behind the desk is like she, it's, very sloppy. And we were walking. I thought one of the most interesting things is we were walking. I had a suit on. You might not, I'm wearing a suit, and I'm walking across this courtyard, and I walked into dust, and my shoes got dusty, and I did this. Like military, like you shine my toes in. And he stopped and he goes, "Why'd you do that? Were you in the military?" And I was like, yeah, I was. Were you? But he was just that was like day one with him, and always leaving phones, listening devices. He's like, hey, your house. Like, I'm really worried about your security here, so I'm gonna get. I have a cousin. He's a retired general. He's gonna put an alarm in the house for you. I'm like, no, I'm good. He's like, no, I insist to put a listening platform inside your house, and so it was that constantly. And then I had one person corner me at a hotel and say, hey, I got something to tell you. Took me to an American hotel, tell me, and I'm like, please don't tell me. Like, I don't want you to tell me that Jack is this guy. He said his name was Jack. Jack is a spy. Like, and please don't tell me. And sure enough, he told me he wanted to confide in me because he wanted something from me. And then now I have to act like a normal person would act. So I have to get on the phone and open line and call and hey, you sponsored my visa and you sent me here. Now I got the government after me. I'm trying to do business here. And so so it was a lot of pressure all the time. And so you ask how the abduction happened. About sunrise, I had a knock on my door. It's Jack. He's got another guy with him, both in suits. And when I opened the door, two big dudes, both in suits as well, come out, and that is four of them. And forced their way in the doorway. And they're like, hey, we want to show you a piece of property. I'm like, at 5 a.m, you want to come show me a piece of property? Who are these guys? And they're like, it's some property that we think you'd be interested in buying. And I'm like, no, I'm not going, right? Like, I'm kind of refusing to go. And they're like, no, you don't understand. Like, you're coming with us. And so I didn't put up a fight because it was a fight that I felt like I could maybe talk my way out of. But when I got in the car, I realized that I probably shouldn't have gotten in the car. And two guys in the front, I'm in the back, in the center, and they start driving and start asking some questions, and then they stopped and everything got silent. And I said a few things, and I realized we're not having a conversation now. They're driving me somewhere, and drove out of the major city into the woods, on the side of a mountain, and they stopped the car and took me out of the car, and I was thinking, I don't have anything to defend myself with. If a gun comes out, I'm gonna fight for my life. But I thought it was gonna die right there. I thought they were gonna question me, interrogate me, and kill me. I was pretty convinced in that moment.
Have you ever been in another situation where you thought you were that certain that you were going to die?
No.
What's going through your head? Other than you're going to die, because eventually that wears off.
Yeah, I said no, but there was moments like around that time that I had such imminence that I would put sticky notes in the lid of my suitcase for my wife, telling her loved her, give her permission to move on with her life. My oldest son, like, you're gonna have to be the man of the house now. Tell my daughter, my other son that I love them. I'd put those sticky notes in the lid of my suitcase, go out on an operation, come back, and I'd throw them away because I didn't want anybody to find them. And then I'd do that over and over again because I think of my personal effects on making home. So I put it in the lid. I was doing that. So I probably had that sense of imminence that I was probably going to get killed because things were getting so sketchy. But in that moment, like, I knew I was going to die at that moment. Like, I mean, in a gunfight, like, you might live, you might die. Mm-hmm. You shot, but I'm like, I'm like 1,000% convinced, like, they're going to kill me. Yeah, they're going to kill me right here.
This is where it ends.
Yeah. And it's one thing, like, when you believe that and know you're going to die, like, and it's not happening, like, it's a pretty heavy thing. People talk about it all the time, like, lightly, but, like, it's a pretty heavy thing. And I believed in that moment I was going to die. That's the only time in my life I ever, like, believed in that moment I'm going to die. I always, like, I'm going to work myself out of this. I'll figure it out. But I didn't feel like I could figure I could talk my way into delay it, but I didn't feel like I could talk my way out of that situation at that point.
At what point you realized when the conversation stopped, you're about to get assassinated? In the car ride.
In the car ride, yeah, in the car. When they stopped talking and we left the city, I knew they were bringing me somewhere to where they were gonna kill me, and that whole time I'm thinking like, do I try to jump out the car? Do I try to, like, fight right here? And but I just didn't feel like that was the right moment, and like, because like I said, I always before thought I could work myself out of this. I kept thinking and looking and plotting for the right moment, but I just felt like there was never the right moment. And so get out. I was hesitant to get out of the car, but I'm like, if they want to kill me, they could kill me in the car. So I just get out. At least maybe I could run or something like that. And they, some heavy questions, very direct questions. Not so much about me, about the program manager who had been in that country before, who they had received it, who I knew they had received information and know who he was. I don't want to say how because I don't want to get the guy in trouble, and he's a friend. But they had information and know who he was, so the questions were more about him, and they were, they were very direct. They knew things that they shouldn't have known, and they basically also validated, insinuated that they were going to kill me. Right there.
How did they say that?
Well, they said I wasn't. You're not leaving this. You're not going to leave this side of this mountain. And they were sort of saying things like that. And then they start shifting to. I know a couple of times he talked about being in a prison. The reason I know that because I've had dreams, I've had terrible nightmares about since being in a prison and the kind of things that they do to get information out of people in a prison. They're like saying this is a kind interview, like basically it would take you down in one of our prisons. It's not going to be the same way. And so I thought that's when I kind of a little bit of hope, like, okay, maybe they're not going to kill me here. Maybe they're going to take me to a secondary interrogation in a prison. But then that actually probably was a little bit more scary to me. But then there was just a moment at that time I felt them kind of concede. I mean, look, you could get anything out of anybody. If people think they could hold up in an interrogation, you can get anything out of anyone you want. I got some missing toenails right now. I mean, imagine you start sticking pins in those missing toenails right now. But they never went that far. And so I don't know why they didn't. I couldn't tell you to this day why they didn't go that far. They didn't physically abuse me. It was just intimidation and threats. So and so because it never got to that point, I just felt like they don't know what they think. They know, but they're not certain. And they're gonna, and I started seeing this hope that they're gonna let me go to let this play out. And that's exactly what happened. They told me to get in the car, never say anything again, drop me off they didn't say a word when they dropped me off back at my house. But it was like 2 hours. And at that point, obviously, I went to Dubai, met my program manager in Dubai, gave a debrief, talked to guys in CI. The CI guys wanted to talk to me, did a debrief with them. And then knowing what I know now, I don't know how this happened, but we proceeded and I went back. And
you went back?
I went back. And honestly,
as a compromised operative, you went back.
I went back. I didn't.
What was the reasoning behind that?
Because of who was next on the list, in the operation that was pending. It was too important to everyone. And so I'll tell you this, like one thing I didn't know at the time.
Hold on. Yeah. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
You're a compromised operative.
The whole operation is compromised in my opinion at that time.
Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
But especially you.
Especially me.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.